Peter, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Marcus. Great to be here.
I'm excited to talk to you today. So let's get started with a quick introduction of yourself and your company, UserActive.
Okay, so yeah, I would describe myself as a creative person. I come from the background of being a product designer. And UserActive, we're a design agency for software companies. So we partner with SaaS companies and help them designing their product. And we also extend that to other aspects of the business, web design and marketing. But predominantly our team, our core skill set is product design and conversion rate optimization.
Awesome. And can you share some metrics about the company, including the employee count, number of clients, something to give the audience some context on where the company is at?
Yeah, so we're a small agency, really. We have a core team of like 5 people, and then we rely on an extended network of consultants and freelancers. So we might use, say, 3 to 4 freelancers at any given time, and that enables us to just grow or expand or minimize our team when we need to. Our revenue stayed, we're at around 50K MRR right now, and that also varies quite a bit. So that flexible team size helps us to cater to like where we're at. We have had times where we have reached 90K MRR and other times where it goes down a little bit. Sometimes it can be even seasonal. So we find like during winter months or like at the end of the year in December, we usually have a lower revenue month. And then around kind of like, say, Q1, Q2, and Q3, we're actually pretty busy. So yeah, I'd say we range between, say, like 30 to 90K, but on average around 50 to 60K MRR.
Awesome. So one thing I'd like to understand more of is who your ideal client profile is, because I know that you guys are working on to improve the growth of SaaS companies. So is there a specific profile of SaaS companies that you guys usually target?
Yeah, the ideal company that we work with is usually at a fairly, I would say, early stage in their business cycle, their business lifetime. So, but they're not just starting out. Typically, our clients are doing around 3 million in ARR, or they're bootstrapped and they've been around a bit longer and they might have grown more MRR. Usually they have funding around seed stage funding, and their team typically looks predominantly technical. So it might be that they have more developers, they might have a more technical mindset in their founding team, like a technical co-founder or two. And usually they're at a point where they've built a really good product, but what they need is some design to really take that product to the next level, because they've usually found traction, they've got some good customers and revenue. And the thing is that their product, although it works well and has some great features, it might not have the best UI. It might be a little bit clunky. It might even look a little bit dated. And they're getting to a stage where that UI, the user experience, has become really important. And for them to get more customers and retain customers and be more competitive in their space, they prioritize design at that stage. So that's usually where we're a really good fit.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've seen, and being an engineer myself, I've built my own applications, and you can really tell when you have an application that's built by engineers in the way the UI looks and why, yeah, somebody would need somebody with that specific skill set to really move the needle at that point.
Yeah.
So when you guys are going to starting the conversations with potential clients, do you find that your customers are usually finding you guys, or are you guys going out there and finding customers that you think need your services?
We do a combination. So we've done a lot of marketing over the last, say, 3 years. But we also go out and do some outreach. So we have, a few channels. We do outreach via outbound email. So that's one strategy that we have, one route to market. And through content and network and digital marketing, we also generate some inbound. So they come from a variety of places. One of which we've got a YouTube channel, so we sometimes have generated leads through that. We've also been involved in some communities, some software communities or groups where I've either done webinars or shared content or training. And I also used to run a Facebook group for SaaS founders, so I'd always put a lot of content in there as well. So yeah, we've got these different channels, and it's a combination of inbound and outbound.
Awesome. Yeah, I was reviewing your online presence before the call, and I saw you were very active on LinkedIn and that you do a meetup in Barcelona for a specific SaaS platform.
Yeah. So yeah, LinkedIn is one of the ways which we kind of generate we expand our reach and share some kind of like best practices and thinking in SaaS design. So it does generate awareness and I make connections through LinkedIn too. And I did used to run a SaaS event. It was a quarterly SaaS event for SaaS stock. So if you're not familiar with SaaS stock, it's one of the biggest SaaS conferences, just like really specialized in SaaS. And they have one every year in Austin, Texas, and one in Dublin in the UK. And another, I think there's a couple in some of the other European cities around the world. But I was managing the Barcelona SaaS Stock local event series. So I was doing that for a couple of years.
Awesome. And between the channels, is there one, like for example, does outreach come up with maybe 50% of your clients and then LinkedIn content or YouTube maybe 20%? Is there a specific breakdown that you guys know of what channels really push a lot of business?
It really has been a multi-channel approach for us. So it really varies between the different channels.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not one that really stands out. It could be a combination of a YouTube channel, LinkedIn, the Facebook group, network, mailing lists, a couple of partnerships. So although I've always looked for one kind of reliable channel, the thing that has worked for us is a multi-channel kind of approach, which I find it's harder work because you have to think of, spread your work across different channels, and it just requires more focus in a bunch of areas rather than being able to just really focus on one and have a reliable lead source. But we haven't gotten to that stage. So I think it's really been the effect of a multi-channel approach that has generated those leads. And sometimes they come from somebody will be aware of us from one thing, a piece of content or a talk, or I've even talked at SaaS conferences, and then they might see us on LinkedIn, or and it can be an accumulated effect of seeing us pop up in a few different places, and eventually they'll book a call. So yeah, in our service kind of based or agency industry, I think it's ideal to find one thing that you can rely on and you can go all in, but that hasn't been the case for us. So it's just been a case of maintaining these channels, assessing them, seeing what works, and maintaining different kind of route to market.
Yeah, and I can see that when you're putting content out there and creating the awareness, it can be something that's hard to measure, but it can work into your other channels, as you said. Maybe somebody's seen a piece of content from you on LinkedIn or a YouTube video, and then you send them an email, and they kind of put two and two together, like, "Hey, I've seen Peter before somewhere," or "I've seen UserActive," and it creates that brand awareness. I had a call a few weeks ago with a founder named Adam Robinson, and that was part of his strategy. We talked a lot about outreach, and he's big on LinkedIn, so he would post a lot on LinkedIn, And he was saying how when he does outreach, because he has this following, it really helps to get higher response rates because people have seen him before. Maybe they've even interacted with some of his content or they're a follower of his on LinkedIn. And then it works in to these other channels. So I found that approach super interesting. And yeah, I can see you guys doing that as well. Even though the LinkedIn stuff or the content stuff could be hard to really measure because like how much of that is really influencing the outreach? How do you measure it? But if it works, it
Yeah.
works.
Yeah. I try to do a post at the moment. I'm trying to do a LinkedIn post each day. And it does take time, to think of the content and the message you want to say and the images or graphics you're going to share. But I think it really helps. It keeps you front of mind. People see you regularly, and when they do have a requirement or need your service, they might consider you. So yeah, that's how I approach it. I'm in one of the groups I'm in. There's a marketing team who do marketing for software for SaaS, and one of their strategies is having this omnipresent approach. So it's like being able to be seen. Your brand gets seen wherever your target audience are. So whether that's the on Instagram or LinkedIn or even in events. So that strategy it's harder, and I think it's more expensive because you have to invest in these different channels. But it's good to always have your brand front and center and reminds people of you. So when they do have a need, then you're the first kind of team that comes to mind.
Right. I'd love to know how you got started with UserActive and what your kind of career trajectory was like to arrive at being a founder of this company. So, do you mind diving in on how the company started and then how you were able to grow the team?
Yeah, it really started from me freelancing and doing consulting in with what I'm doing now for UserActive. So if I go way back, like I always liked design, right? And then I studied design in university, so I got a degree in product design. And then after getting some work experience, then I started contracting and freelancing in London, and I was doing a lot of different design projects. What happened eventually is that started focusing just on software, working with software companies, and I really found that to be the sweet spot of what I enjoyed working on the most, working with products. And From there, it just grew into much more work than I could just do myself. And so I'd start to, hire a freelancer to support me, and that eventually would come into a full-time role, and then hire more designers when I needed them, and then somebody to manage the designers, and then a marketing person. So it's just kind of grown organically, and it's been progression from consulting, freelancing, and consulting.
Mhm. I'd love to know what that feeling was like of hiring your first employee. As many times, if you're working with a consultant or a freelancer, you have a lot less overhead than having a full time employee, especially in the services based business where the work can be up and down. Maybe they're not utilized 100% of the time. So,
Yeah,
can you dive into what that transition was like and then how you finally
yeah.
decided or how you decided to make the move to hire somebody full time?
I've had that experience a few times. Because it's not the UserActive isn't the first time I had that that progression. So
Okay.
if I describe it, the way it feels the first time you do it, it's scary. It's difficult. Also, when you're working, just like if you're a one person consultant business, even your own work stream cannot be reliable, and it can fluctuate. And sometimes you get overloaded and it's really stressful. And then when you finish projects, sometimes it will be a little bit quiet and you're thinking, oh, well, I was so busy before, where are all the projects? So you're dealing with that already. In the really busy periods, it's great to have someone who can help. But the thing is, what I found is that I would need somebody who was quite skilled, and therefore they would command like a fairly good hourly rate in comparison to what I was billing clients. So the first thing that happens is that you're starting to split you're earning, and it really impacts it. So the way that I started doing that, it would be hiring freelancers here and there and managing the freelancers. So it is quite challenging, because initially that gives you more work to do, to get somebody on board, help them understand the project. Then quite often you're briefing them and then reviewing their work. So there's a little bit of managing that goes along with it. And because the product design type of work that I do for our clients, it's quite skilled and specialized. So some people in this situation might be able to hire a lower level or less experienced person, but I would need a kind of mid to senior level skilled design person. So that was the challenge. Is like the cost of that person, and then the reliability of the workflow that I could hand to them. I need to make sure that I consistently had enough work. So yeah, I found it quite difficult to navigate, but quite a fulfilling challenge. Like I always like having a good challenge to work with, and what it might not have worked perfectly the first or second try, because you also, when you start doing it, you start to figure out what works and what's the best fit and what kind of person fits with what you need, right? Or performs well in that situation, because it also has to be somebody who likes that type of role, somebody who doesn't need to be managed too much, likes taking initiative, but doesn't want to find their own projects, but also is happy to work with one other person. So it's a very specific kind of person who might like that. They might love working with startups. So those are the kind of challenges that go into finding the right person. And then eventually what I found is that it would free up some of my time. So, the first time you hire someone, your income goes down, but it frees up some time. And then I was able to go off and work on marketing and sales. And, eventually you get to a point where it's not such a squeeze on revenue, because you might have a few consultants that work on the team that help generate the revenue, and the additional margin from that revenue can cover other things like marketing. So it's constantly a balancing act, and you're always like trying to get to the next step. And you're also kind of like taking on a little bit more than you feel comfortable with. That's how it feels, going from that kind of one person to your first hire and then beyond. So yeah.
Yeah. No, it's very interesting to hear, because initially with that first hire, as you said, your income might go down a bit, but then you have this time that you could really work on the business instead of in it and fulfilling those client needs. So it seems like to me, it's looking at that long-term vision and understanding, hey, maybe I'll take an income hit right now, but the business is going to grow as a result of this.
Yeah, I think that's the way to look at it. You have to look at it medium to longer term, and have a bit of a vision of where you want to get to, because the very first thing that happens is the income goes down, and even your workload goes up. So your time goes down a little bit at first, because not only do you have the work to do that you were doing before, but now you have to kind of like bring someone on, manage them, brief them, and so if it's a good person, they can get along with it quite quickly, and then it frees you up. So it's just like it almost feels like a little step back and then two steps forward, and kind of progresses like that. That's how it feels anyway.
Right. And where you guys are at currently now, I believe you're 4 or 5 people at UserActive, correct?
Yeah, like full time. Yeah.
Full time. Have you
Well,
found that's a sweet spot for the agency in terms of size?
for where we are right now, it is. So that's the other thing. If I compare us to the kind of clients we work with, they have more of a fixed income, because they'll have like software customers who are on recurring monthly billing, and they might get to like 100K MRR, but it kind of stays fairly fixed. It doesn't go up and down as much. Whereas we'll have much fewer clients and much higher ticket value. So for us, it can go up and down a lot. A little while ago, we were 8 people full time, plus some freelancers and contractors, and there was a few for a while that was like we were all really busy. But then we finished up, say, 2 or 3 very big contracts in a short period of time, and then our
Mm.
team really didn't need to be that big. So we have to stay agile and flexible. And where we are right now, we are like, say, probably like in our core team, we're a little under resourced. Like, and we're working with, like, say, 4 freelancers and contractors to support us right now, and so we're at that point where it's a bit of a squeeze. We're super busy, but we know that we're finishing a couple of projects soon, so that will free up a little bit of time. But then we on the brink of closing 2 or 3 fairly big contracts. So I'll just describe that because it like hopefully gives you a sense of how flexible, movable the whole thing is. It's always changing. So just like we found that being agile and flexible, able to react quickly to increase in demand and decrease in demand. Even though we have a kind of recurring revenue model, we might have a client for 6 months, but when they do finish, it can, because there's fairly high ticket sales, it can be take like a good chunk of our revenue, and our capacity gets freed up. So it's also, we're always trying to keep that pipeline full and busy, and also trying to react to the increase and decrease in demand at any given time.
Awesome. I'd like to dive in now to what a typical client engagement looks like for you guys at UserActive. And yeah, the duration of those projects, what you guys are delivering, etc.
Yeah, so a typical client project for us is around 6 months long. The value, the average amount that a customer will spend with us is something like around $35,000. And there is quite a range as well. So we can work with companies. I'd say like the shortest time we'll work with companies might be just, say, a one-off workshop, which is a very small focused piece of work where we'll help them with a specific problem. But on projects, it's usually, say, like the shortest one could be around 3 months. But we've also had clients where we work with them for a number of years as their design team, just on an ongoing basis. So yeah, it does range, but like the average is, say, around 6 months and around 35K.
Okay. And can you dive into the workshops? I'd love to learn more about what that process is, how much you guys charge for it, and what the deliverable is that the client gets at the end of one.
Yeah, so we've got say 2 different additional services that help teams who just have a specific problem, or they're scoping a project. Well, our first one is a discovery. That's $1,000, and in discovery we'll jump into like a really like couple of focus sessions with the client, where we'll take them through helping them shape the scope of their project. We'll help them prepare some deliverables, like a project architecture sitemap, or a structure for the navigation of their software. And we have a more in-depth workshop, which is $3,000, and that one is, say, around a week long, where we'll jump into a couple of sessions where we'll solve some big product challenges that they're having in software. And that might be something like, they're not retaining customers, so that they need some better onboarding and working on retention. So we'll jump into the product, look at the areas that need improvements, and then we'll actually do some work and make some suggestions. So that's more like consulting than design, and that enables clients would like to work with us to get a taste of what it's like, and also to get some value in just like a small short-term focus project that solves some of their issues.
That's super interesting. So you can start with so if your typical engagement is $35,000, do you find that a lot of those clients start with a $1,000 or $3,000 workshop, and then they turn into longer term clients afterwards?
Yeah, usually that's how it goes. Because even say a company might not know how much work they need to do or how long they will want to work with us, but they might have an idea of what they need to do. So the first thing is often, scoping that and understanding it to, and then it's usually goes into a design process, and yeah, like we'll usually kind of estimate and cost something up before then, but typically it starts with the workshop kind of process.
Okay. And then when you guys are estimating these longer term projects, I love getting into the nitty gritty of this stuff because as an engineer, understanding businesses, I've worked in an agency before a few years ago. So I've seen the difference between, so we worked in an office, it's about 20 people, but we were part of a larger agency that was maybe 150. So the scope was a lot different. So, and what happens at that sort of size is that the engineers can be a few steps away from where the conversations are happening over pricing, etc. You kind of have a vague idea, but you don't really know exactly what's going on. So I love hearing about how it works at this level. When you guys are pricing these longer term engagements, are you able to fix price the whole project, I guess based on the results of the workshop? Or do you break up the pricing structure into, I don't know, daily or weekly segments for X amount of days or weeks?
Yeah, each project's slightly unique in a way. So sometimes it will be a very defined scope of work that we can estimate as a kind of project cost. But we also have some companies that work with us who just need design support on an ongoing basis. So we have monthly plans, so they can subscribe to a monthly plan and work with us on that. And we also might have smaller projects where they just need a bunch of hours and they'll use our designers on hourly support rates. So it all comes down to the requirement for the client that we're speaking to, what they need. And some will come with a specific product idea or something they want to launch, and they'll say, hey, we've got this product idea, we need to design it really well, we want a great UX, but here's exactly what it is and the market, and here's the user. And when we're able to work with them to scope it out in a really detailed and defined way, and we know that the scope of it's just this one project, then we can actually cost that up on a kind of project cost for them. So it all comes down to the nature of the requirement that the prospect or the client has, and we do find that it differs quite a lot. SaaS is a really big space, and so many different companies, and they also have a different capacity for what they need in terms of design and where they're at. So it's just really, it all comes down to that part of the process comes down to like the sales journey, really going through the sales process of understanding the prospect's problem, understanding their requirements, what they're looking for, getting to know that really well and helping them shape and define it to the point where then we're able to estimate what resource we need to put on it, how long it will take us, and then we're able to cost it for them. So what we've done to cater for the variety is just have a few different approaches to what and I'll choose the approach that best fits what their requirement is. So it's all dictated by what the client's requirement is.
So when you guys are going and building up those requirements for a new project, are you guys identifying which KPIs and what things to look out for that would make this project a successful project? And if so, can you expand on that process and what you guys usually look for?
Yeah, that's a good question. So that's part of what our workshop includes. So I have a section in there where we talk about the desired results for a project. So I gave an example earlier about a software company who's looking to improve retention. So say they have customers that will sign up to their product, they'll go through a free trial, they might upgrade and pay, but then they might not stick around for very long. Like say they try it out for 1 or 2 months and then they churn. Well, when we're speaking to a prospect who has that kind of problem, we'll dive into the product, see if we can, understand from them and also from what we see, where potentially where the issues might be. And then we might have, a kind of retention metric, and we'll measure that and we'll say, look, if the average lifetime value is based on 3 months, we want to try to extend that to 6 months. So we might do a design project, release those updates into the product, and and then measure and see how it goes. So some of those take a long time to measure because like you won't see that impact right away, right? Well, it will take a period of months to see any improvements. But usually, like we can make estimates that make a really big impact because the companies that work with us, the UI needs a lot of work. Usually, the UI, the UX needs a lot of work. So when we come in and we really take it to the next level, usually the metrics they improve just by doing that, you know. So typical things that we'll set as you know, metrics to track and measure are things like free trial to paid conversion rates, retention rate. It might also be things like website visitors to signups, like free trial signups. It might also be things like a North Star metric. So some software companies will measure like the first core or key action a user takes when they sign up. So if it's a CRM, it might be adding their first contact and making their first deal in the CRM. So it could be a metric around helping improve or reduce the time it takes for a user to, you know, hit that North Star metric, or you know, how many users are able to reach that result as well. So yeah, again, it's like we do have these metrics that we'll measure for results, and then they're very specific to each company, what their requirements and what their problems and challenges they're dealing with, what they are. So part of our workshop goes into defining that.
Is there a specific project that you've worked on where you guys really nailed it? And can you dive into what those KPIs were and what the results were of that project?
Yeah, we've got a few, like we've got a lot actually. So
Oh, let's hear it.
yeah, we've got quite a few of them. I've got this this page where I keep results that we've had with our clients. I think I just set off the balloons.
That's a great timing for the balloons.
That was a total accident. So in this deck, I list out some of our key results, and I'm just pulling it up so I can talk through some of them. But there was one company we worked with where we redesigned the experience users have when they land in the product for the first time. So this was a dashboard that they see. This is a CRM. It was a dashboard. They log into the CRM. And what this company had before, they'd kind of like done, it was like they'd dumped a few metrics on this screen, which were a bit random. And they didn't really relate to like the users, what they were trying to achieve. So they'd kind of sign up and log in, and their first time into the platform was a little bit like, what's this, kind of like underwhelming feeling. And we went through this process with them to understand who these users are. They actually had 3 different user profiles, and then we redesigned this whole dashboard experience for each of these 3 different profiles, so that we gave them a different experience for each one. And we ended up increasing their conversion rates from free trial to paid from 18 to 26%. And it added actually, because they had quite a good revenue, so that percentage increase actually added quite a lot of revenue to them. So it added like 330k ARR,
Wow.
like pretty much straight away, just from the first, you know, few months of increasing that conversion rate. So those are the kind of metrics that we're really proud of. But we've helped say three software companies exit. We've helped another company 3x their free to paid conversion rates. We've also redesigned homepages where it's increased the free trial sign up conversion rate by 67%. We've helped teams increase their development velocity, so which really enables them to like ship a lot faster. And how we did that was just by introducing design systems and UI component libraries. So I'll just give you one more example. Like there's a company we worked with on this one, a company we worked with who were using like Bootstrap, but they were pretty much hard coding everything in their software. And when we
Mhm.
realized that, we were like, well, that's a crazy way to work nowadays. It's really slow, and it means that nothing was consistent. Like different screens had some like different treatments for UI. So we introduced this Tailwind, and I think they started to use Angular JS, and we would create a design system for them based on Tailwind. And then this component library that they could use, and we gave them like components that whenever you need this type of UI, use this component. If you need to modify it, you've got these other components, so they can all work together. And they ended up like speeding up their rate of development like exponentially, and enabled them to just move so much faster. And ultimately, it just saves them a lot of money on development costs, or like makes the most of the money they're spending, right? Because if they had a team, I think they had a team of around 10 developers. So then that team was working almost twice as fast. So just made a really good impact. So that's one of the things I've learned through doing this, is that the impact you can make through design is so varied. It's not always just conversion rates. There's so many different things that it impacts, and it's really cool seeing like what you can achieve with really good design.
I love those results. It's especially interesting the last example that you gave with the design system.
Yeah.
As was that something, I want to dive a bit more into that before we start wrapping up. Was that something that was originally a problem that the client knew they needed to implement, or was that something that you guys started working with them and then you identified afterwards and you were able to pitch that?
Yeah, that's a good question, because when they came, they knew that they needed more consistent design, and they knew that the developers found it challenging to also be kind of operating as designers for the front end, right? They just work with what they had, or they'd implement something based on how they figured it should be. There wasn't like a lot of thought from design, because that wasn't really their skill set. So they were aware of this problem, but when we got working with them, and they saw the impact of design, they started to like, they knew the value of it already, right? Which is why they worked with us. But I think the impact and the design systems, and they also knew they wanted to rebuild their platform. So they actually rebuilt their software from scratch. Like they created a new version of it, and used these new tools. And it was after doing that they saw the rate of the increase in development velocity, and then they mentioned back to us, hey, like, this is the result we've seen since working with you guys. So yeah, I think it was not the result that they came looking to achieve, but it was like a real benefit to the process that they observed as well. So it's really cool.
Yeah, I love that addition, and that will lead to a very high level of client satisfaction.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
All right, Peter, as we start to wind down here, I have two final questions for you. One is, where do you see yourself and UserActive in 5 years from now?
Yeah, so we are not, we're not like the biggest, fastest growing type of agency, because we're very specialized and hyper skilled. So we want to grow, and we want to serve as many software companies as we can. So in the the 5 years to come, we're going to keep working on doing that, growing and being able to serve more companies. Our mission is to help software founders create meaningful products users love. So we really enjoy the work. I really enjoy this business, as well as it being challenging. So it's just to continue this and keep putting out great products, designing great products and interactions, and serving more companies. We also want to share some of the knowledge that we get. So have more content and resources to share the experience and skills that we have, that people who can't necessarily work with us can use it and benefit from that on their own products. So yeah, that's really the mission, to just keep going with this agency, build it, and serve more software companies.
Awesome. And what's one piece of advice that you give to your younger self throughout all your experience being an entrepreneur?
Um, yeah, that's a good question. It's so hard to focus on to find one thing because there's just so much that I've learned doing over so many different challenges. Um, I think my main thing is to enjoy solving problems. When each problem comes up, it's just an opportunity to solve something to take your business a step forward. So enjoy problem solving. And whilst you're doing that, don't get too hung up on where you feel the business should be, or kind of getting excited by distracting shiny objects, things like that. It's kind of like being fine with the course that you're on, and enjoy the problems that presents to you, because what's typical for agencies is you can always think it's there's another thing out there that's shinier or easier or better, and I've even seen this with software companies. But I think the best problem you have in business is the one in front of you, and the best way forward is solving each one step by step, and learning what you can from it. And I think you can always find a bigger problem to solve later on, and just like succeeding in the business you're in is a really good start.
Well said, Peter. So where can people go to find you online?
I think the best place is LinkedIn. Peter Loving on LinkedIn. You can visit useractive.io. That's our website. Our YouTube channel is also UserActive, so you can check us out there. But yeah, those are the main three places, I'd say.
Awesome, Peter. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I've really enjoyed this conversation as we went very practical in our conversation topics and got into the nitty gritty, which I'd love to hear, and I think will bring a lot of value to the listeners. So thanks again, Peter, for coming on the show.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Really enjoyed talking about it as well. Cheers, Marcus.